I'm Ali, and I've been diagnosed with PCOS. I am 1 in 10. I was diagnosed in January of 2018 with PCOS. I had every symptom. When you Google PCOS, you'll find all the symptoms. I had all of them except for cysts, which makes PCOS really difficult to diagnose. So it took a number of internal ultrasounds and finally blood work to determine that I did in fact have polycystic ovarian syndrome in the absence of cysts. When I was diagnosed with PCOS, I was honestly relieved. I had been feeling symptoms for a couple of years. I had symptoms from when I was a teenager, when I first went into puberty, when I first got a menstrual cycle, and I didn't know how to manage those symptoms. I didn't know that those symptoms were PCOS. So in a lot of ways, when PCOS was named as the condition that I had, it was relieving to know. I was also obviously sad and a bit scared because PCOS obviously predisposes women to a number of other conditions. It helped to explain things like the fact that I have generalized anxiety disorder. GAD and PCOS are oftentimes linked. And I was really just keen on treating it and dealing with it as best as I could when I found out that I did in fact have PCOS. I've spent so much time researching about PCOS that I can't remember if I knew about PCOS before I started researching my symptoms or if I found out about PCOS by researching my symptoms. I did all of those symptom tests online on WebMD and any available hormone testing site. I filled out all the questions, and I pretty much knew I had PCOS before the blood work confirmed it. And it was really frustrating even doing like all of the internal ultrasounds, which are really uncomfortable if you've ever had one done, because I did know that I had the majority of symptoms of PCOS, and I knew a couple of women who had it as well. I don't know if I can pinpoint the most frustrating symptom. I think initially, before I was diagnosed, the most frustrating symptom was the fact that I did not have a menstrual cycle for over a year. I had all of the symptoms of a menstrual cycle, so I had cramps, bloating, migraines, acne, weight gain, and none of the relief of actually bleeding, which is an experience that many women with PCOS I know have. And it was really frustrating to feel as though my body just wasn't working. I was in a lot of discomfort not having a menstrual cycle. It also made me question whether or not I would be fertile, if I'd be able to have kids, if that was something that I wanted. With the absence of a menstrual cycle, obviously you can't. Thankfully now I have gotten back a menstrual cycle. I found out later that it was insulin resistance that caused the majority of my symptoms. So I guess insulin resistance might be one of my most frustrating symptoms, and also male pattern hair growth is really uncomfortable because it's just embarrassing in a lot of ways. It's not something that we talk about. It's not something that feels good. It's something that we think doesn't look good. A lot of people would look at me and not see it necessarily. They may not know what I've done to get rid of it. So I think it's hard to pinpoint the most frustrating symptom of PCOS. You know, if I think that anxiety is a symptom of PCOS, then we have a whole other gamut of symptoms that I could talk about that are intensely frustrating. But I've tried to think about the fact that I have PCOS and how it affects me, not as negatively, not as a negative thing, but as something that I have to embrace and accept, and just love my body through in order to not feel consistently frustrated by the symptoms that it causes. PCOS has absolutely impacted my mental health. If you consider that PCOS and anxiety or depression are linked, then voila, here I am, a linkage of GAD and PCOS. But also I think PCOS, and this is something maybe that we don't speak about as publicly as we do speak about it in support groups or with other sisters, as I like to call them. Get it? CYST. But is just how much PCOS affects your femininity and your sexuality, and just a feeling of being empowered in your most feminine self, feeling as though you're not sexy, feeling as though you're unattractive, feeling as though the symptoms control what you do and how you do it and what you eat and what you wear and how you move through the world. And you know, I used to have really bad nausea when I first started getting treatment for PCOS because I took metformin. I'd have to leave class in grad school to go home because I just could not sit through a lecture because I just felt to throw up the entire time. And I think we don't talk about how much of a toll that takes on us mentally as people with what's called like a silent illness, and how, you know, that really can affect your self-esteem or how you see yourself as moving through the world, especially as a young woman. I do have both family and friends who have PCOS. A young cousin of mine just got diagnosed, and so I've been helping her through that diagnosis. I'm really glad that she got it earlier on in life than I did, so hopefully she can prevent, you know, late onset of symptoms or learn to manage her body and love herself through it earlier on in life. I have a lot of friends with PCOS. I think I've created friendships through PCOS. I'm very public about my PCOS experience on social media or in spaces where women's health aren't talked about. I make a point of talking about it because friendships have been the thing that have supported me the most outside of and alongside treatment for PCOS. Before I knew I had PCOS, I was put on birth control for an irregular menstrual cycle when I was 17. I came off of birth control just because of, you know, all of the confusion around whether or not birth control contributed to other illnesses. I have a history of breast cancer in my family, so I wanted to ensure that I was taking the right birth control. And when I came off of birth control, I found that I had no menstrual cycle whatsoever. And a number of the symptoms that plagued me as a young woman started coming back when I identified them later on through my diagnosis of PCOS. But currently I take metformin. I started taking about 2 grams per day of metformin, which will make you intensely sick if anyone has taken that. I'm now down to a gram or 500 milligrams, depending on how I feel. To manage insulin resistance, which has allowed me to, I've lost almost 30 pounds. I've been able to engage a diet that feels good for me, and I move my body 4 to 5 times per week. I consider that a huge part of my treatment. Initially, when I was diagnosed, the only thing that I felt energetic enough to do was yoga. Restorative yoga. Obviously there's lots of fast-paced hard yoga that I try and do now, but in terms of my treatment plan, it's really movement that feels good for my body and metformin. So I tried magnesium. I know a lot of women take magnesium for PCOS. There's a whole combination of vitamins that on the internet tells you that you should take for PCOS. I probably tried all of them. Most of them made me sick, probably because I took metformin alongside them. Magnesium made me the most sick initially. So I really just try and take vitamins that just make me feel well, like vitamin C, for example. But I did find that evening primrose oil helped a lot with cramps for me when I was 16, 17 and had really severe cramping and really hard menstrual cycles. Exercise has absolutely been a game changer for me in managing PCOS. I've always been a pretty active person, or I should say for, you know, my adult life, I've been a pretty active person. I played tennis growing up. I used to bike a lot. I still do. And I found that yoga and low impact cardiovascular exercises, as well as, you know, some weight training, really did help me in getting PCOS under control and, you know, putting me back in control of my body. to feel as though I could get strong and I could be fit and I could do things that felt outside of my symptoms. I have gotten the most information about PCOS from other women who have PCOS. My endocrinologist, who I saw when I was living in New York, she actually also has PCOS, and that has been really incredible for me to have a medical relationship with a physician who understands the condition that she's helping me to treat. So many male doctors before her, told me that my symptoms weren't significant enough for them to do the kind of rigorous testing that she did. I had some doctors tell me that I was likely just sneaking food while I was gaining weight. Meanwhile, I was eating like grass and gaining weight. I had doctors tell me to just take birth control and ignore the other feelings that I was having. I was told that anxiety wouldn't be hormonal. I was told that, how I felt on my period didn't necessarily mean anything other than I had a hard period. So having a female endocrinologist who has the condition has been game-changing and given me so much information about it outside of just the textbook responses that doctors will give you, and the treatment that they'll give you, but also other women who have PCOS have provided me with the most information about PCOS that I think I could find, need, want, enjoy, benefit from. So for women who think you may have PCOS, my first piece of advice to you is to see a doctor and advocate for your health. It's okay if they initially tell you that they don't think you need a certain set of tests, or that you might not look like or seem like a candidate for PCOS. If you feel as though your symptoms need further investigation, as much as you can afford to, seek out additional medical help. I also would give the advice to any woman with PCOS who, as I said again, has access to or can afford it, to seek professional mental health support, as well as join a support group. They're free and they're amazing, and there's lots of them available here in Jamaica, around the world. And banding together with other women who experience the things that you experience not only makes you not feel alone, but makes you feel more normal and makes you feel as though you're a part of a really special and unique community who is there to support you and there to hold your hand through it. And that, for me, has just been the most impactful part of my PCOS journey, has been having other women hold my hand through it and being able to hold other women's hands through it. The final thing that I would say is, as much as you feel comfortable, be vocal about your condition. Share with others about it. You never know what your voice can do in adding to the conversation and allowing other women to feel safe to talk about how they feel and what they're experiencing.